literally thousands of ways in which the basic 12-bar sequence familiar to us in blues music has become adapted and changed by jazz musicians. But if there is such a thing as a standard 12-bar blues in jazz, I would say it's this one in B flat. Let's take a look at the rhythm part a chunk at a time. Now, there's no reason not to use bar chords to play through this, but to encourage you towards a slightly more jazz-based approach, I want to show you some 4-note chords that I would probably prefer to use over a sequence like this most of the time. Starting with the B flat 7th. Played with your first finger on the root note B flat at fret 6 on the bottom E string. Then we add the flatted 7th note with our second finger, and that's also at fret 6 but on the D string. Then we can add the 5th note with our third finger, and that's on the 2nd string at fret 6 as well. And finally we add the 3rd, which is at the 7th fret on the G string. Now, while we're getting used to the sequence, we can just strum through these chords. But do make sure that you take note of the little X marks on the diagram on the A string and top E string. These tell you to mute these strings out. So if I play this chord one string at a time, you'll hear we are sounding the 6th string, muting the 5th, sounding the 4th, 3rd and 2nd, and muting the top. And this is done just by allowing the underside of this first finger to touch the 5th string. See that there? And at the top end here, I actually use this part of my hand just to kill that top string. Depends on the size and shape of your fingers. You may also find the underside of the 3rd finger will do that job for you. So a little bit of experimentation to see what works best for you on that. The point about this is we can then strum away all 6 strings to our heart's content, and we know we're not going to get these notes that aren't in the chord. If I straighten that out and take the muting off, you'll hear, whoops, a completely different chord. So muting is a vital part of these shapes. Later in this lesson we will explore some other ways of using the right hand using thumb and fingers. But for now I'm sticking with the plectrum, so we're just concentrating on learning the left hand first. Okay, the next bar we want to shift to E flat 7th. For this you can of course use the A 7th shape bar chord, but in most situations I prefer to use the C7 shape. Okay, so for this shape we want our 3rd finger on the root note, that's E flat here at fret 6 on the A string. Then we make a little triangle with our 2nd and 4th fingers like that. So that's the 2nd finger, fret 5 on the 4th string, and pinky, fret 6 on the G string. And then finally we add the top root there with our 1st finger, 2nd fret on the B string. Then again, to mute out the top string, we just let the underside of that finger kill that string there. And muting out the bottom string, I tend to just let my thumb creep over there. Again, depending on the size and shape of your fingers, you may prefer to use the tip of that finger just to touch the 6th string. That works fine as well. After that, it's back to 2 more bars of B flat 7th, then 2 more bars of E flat 7th. Then it's back to B flat 7th for 1 bar, before jumping down to G 7th, which we play using exactly the same shape, just shifted down from the root at fret 6 to the root at the G at fret 3 on the bottom string there. Now optionally, you can fill in the gap in between by doing something like this. For the bar of B flat 7th, we split it into 2 beats on B flat, 1 on A, 1 on A flat, down to G. So we get something of a cliche in jazz music. Use it sparingly, I would say. After that, we shift our root note up to the A string to grab the C there, and we play C minor 7th. You can see that this looks like the same shape as the dominant 7th we use for B flat 7th and G 7th. But as it shifts across the strings, it gets turned into a minor by the effect of the 2nd string tuning anomaly. So as we move this shape across to a higher string, the note under our pinky, which was a major 3rd here, actually becomes a minor 3rd because it's on the 2nd string, which as we know is tuned 1 fret lower relative to all the others. So that's how that works, major to minor. Next we play F 7th, which we can just play using the same shape as the G 7th, but down at F at the 1st frets. So just to recap the whole sequence so far, we start with 1 bar of B flat 7th, 1 bar of E flat 7th, B flat 7th for 2 bars, 2 bars of E flat 7th, 1 bar of B flat 7th, 1 bar of G 7th, C minor 7th, F 7th. Now those last 4 chords, B flat down to G, up to C minor to F, form part of what we call a circle of 4th sequence. In this case, from chord 1, we're going 6, 2, 5 steps on the B flat major scale, remember. So these circles of 4th sequences are extremely common in jazz, and in fact this one simply repeats again, but twice as fast. So having played those 4 chords 1 bar each, we then do them again half a bar each. And that acts as a sort of turnaround back into the next verse. Taking another look at the whole sequence, perhaps from a point of view of analysis, you can see that the first 6 bars are exactly as we would expect from a quick change 12-bar blues. A bar of chord 1, then the quick change up to chord 4 and back to the key chord for 2 bars. Then 2 more bars of chord 4. Then as we enter the section marked in yellow, we come back to chord 1 again before heading off to the 6th chord to start on a trip round the circle of fourths. From G it is 4 steps up to C minor 7th, then another 4 up to F, although of course we drop the octave at that point, and a further 4 up to take us back to the key chord B flat 7th. As we enter the area marked in blue, you can see exactly the same 6-2-5 sequence repeated. G, C, F, but twice as quickly. The repeat marks then lead us back to the B flat 7th to complete the 6-2-5-1 circle. By understanding the chord relationships, you're going to make the job of learning and memorising new tunes so much easier for yourself in jazz. And this is because the same basic ideas crop up time and time again in one arrangement after another. And this 6-2-5-1 sequence is one of those jazz cliches that you're going to see literally hundreds of times as you learn new tunes. Okay, so once you've learnt these new chord shapes, if they are new to you, and got used to playing the sequence, then I will concentrate on strumming through the sequence with a nice, clean, crisp rhythm, separating out each beat with good left-hand muting, like this. Keep the strumming nice and clean and simple. Resist the temptation to make it too interesting, like this. You want just keep it absolutely straight. It's quite a discipline in jazz, but most of the time, simple and straightforward works better than getting too complicated and fancy. Notice how I'm punching in every single beat with a sort of squeezing action on the left hand. This makes a huge difference to the sound. It gives it a sort of rhythmic definition. Without it, I sound a bit like this. It just doesn't have the same sort of punch. Just gives it a little rhythmic punch. Next, I'd like to show you a couple of approaches of playing without a pick, using your thumb and fingers. Now, the first of these is actually a little bit of a cheat because it gives you a bit of extra time to get your chord changes in place. So what I'm doing here is I'm playing the first beat with my thumb on its own on the root note, and then for the second beat I'm adding 3 fingers, first, second, third fingers on the remaining 3 notes of the chord, but I'm including the thumb root note as well and playing that with a sort of almost like a plucking action. So we get 1, 2, and then we simply do the same thing on the 3rd and 4th beats as well. So 1 bar is 1, 2, 3, 4. So when I change to the E flat 7th there, my thumb's moving to the 5th string because the root note moves up to the 5th string, and those three fingers again on the second, third and fourth strings. Down to G, up to the C minor, again I move across to the fifth string root, and this time these three fingers move to the top three strings, down to the F, and then round the circle again. So that's one way of using the right hand. A slightly more advanced way is to use pluck and tap technique, and this works best for more sort of Latin rhythms, maybe something like that sort of thing. So that's pluck all four, tap, and then separate thumb and fingers. So it's pluck, tap, thumb, fingers, tap. Pluck, tap, thumb, fingers, tap. There are many possible variations on these basic comping patterns, but holding down a clean and consistent rhythm is an essential first step to master. So I strongly recommend spending many hours practicing keeping it clean and simple to start with. Okay, so that's laid down the rhythm part of this standard jazz 12-bar blues in B flat. In the next lesson, we're going to turn our attention to lead guitar, and we're going to work through an arpeggio-based exercise that lays a really strong foundation for coming up with some great chord-based soloing ideas over this tune. So I look forward to seeing you for that.